You've probably seen the headline before, maybe on a news site, maybe in one of those financial YouTube videos with the red thumbnail. It says something like, by the time you're 55, you should have 7 to 10 times your annual salary saved in your 401k. If your salary is $80,000 a year, that's somewhere between $560,000 and $800,000. Now here's the number most people actually have. According to Vanguard's 2025 How America Saves data, using year-end 2024 balances, the average 401k balance for people aged 55 to 64 is around $244,750. The median, the number that reflects the middle of the actual population, not the wealthy outliers pulling the average up, is $87,571. So you have this enormous gap. The headlines say you need $560,000 to $800,000. Half the country has under $88,000. And every year, a new wave of people in their mid to late 50s reads that gap and feels the same thing, that quiet, sinking sense that they've already lost. But before you land there, before you close the browser tab or mentally check out, there's a problem with the math that nobody in those videos mentions. The number they're quoting only counts one account. One, it doesn't count the IRA you rolled over from your job in 2011. It doesn't count a pension if you have one. It doesn't count home equity, which for most Americans in this age group represents a substantial portion of their actual net worth. The benchmark is measuring one slice of your financial life and telling you it's the whole picture. That's not a minor footnote. That's a fundamentally broken comparison. And today, we're going to look at what the real picture actually looks like in 2026. Let me give you a specific picture of how this plays out. A 56-year-old engineer in Texas logs into his company's HR portal one afternoon. He's just switched jobs. New company, new benefits package. He downloads the PDF showing his current 401k balance at this employer. $40,000. He stares at it for a moment. This is the account tied to a company logo he's only known for 8 months. But that's not what he's thinking about. He's thinking about the years, the decades, the Saturday mornings he skipped vacations for. And somehow this number on the screen feels like a verdict on all of it. What he isn't seeing, because this one PDF doesn't show it, is the $150,000 sitting in a rollover IRA from a job he left in 2014. He's not seeing the pension from his previous employer, which when converted to an equivalent lump sum value, represents roughly $80,000 in retirement assets. He's not seeing any of that. He's looking at one slice and reading it as the whole story. $40,000 plus $150,000 plus $80,000 is $270,000. That's his actual retirement picture. That's what total wealth aggregation means, adding up every piece, not just the account that happens to be active at your current employer. This is the structural problem with reports like Vanguard's annual How America Saves. The methodology only tracks balances inside 401k plans that Vanguard currently administers. It has no visibility into rollover IRAs from previous employers, no visibility into pension values, no visibility into cash savings or home equity. It's not wrong data. It's just incomplete data being used to make a complete judgment. And the financial media picks up that number every year, strips away the methodology footnotes, and turns it into a headline that lands in your feed at 7 in the morning. If your 401k balance looks low right now, there's a straightforward structural reason for that. Most people in their 50s and early 60s have changed jobs multiple times. The average American changes employers around 12 times over a career. Each time that happens, some portion of retirement savings moves into a rollover IRA, into a different plan, sometimes temporarily out of the system entirely during a transition. The accounting is scattered. That's not a character flaw. That's just how the system works. So the real question isn't, does my 401k balance match the benchmark? The real question is, when you add up every piece, current 401k, old IRAs, pension value if applicable, and yes, home equity, where does your total retirement picture actually stand? That's a harder number to find, but it's the only number worth measuring yourself against. So if the 401k balance alone is just one piece of the puzzle, then what does the full picture actually need to look like at each stage of life? Let's walk through the real benchmarks, not the ones designed to generate clicks, but the ones that reflect how people actually build wealth over a working life. Let's move through the age milestones quickly, because the math in your 30s and 40s is not where most of you are right now. In your 30s, the target across your total retirement assets is roughly 1 to 2 times your annual salary. At this stage, the math genuinely does favor time. Small, consistent contributions compound meaningfully over 30 years. The conventional advice here is mostly correct. In your 40s, that benchmark climbs to around 3 to 4 times your salary. Life gets expensive in your 40s. Mortgages, tuition, car payments stacking on top of each other. A lot of people slow their contributions during this decade without fully realizing it. Then you hit your 50s, and this is where the standard playbook starts to break down. The benchmarks say, by 55, you should have 7 times your salary. By 60, 8 times. By 67, 10 times. If you're 58 and looking at a total retirement picture that's sitting at 3 or 4 times your salary instead of 7 or 8, those numbers don't feel like a benchmark. They feel like a closed door. And when a door feels closed, most people stop knocking. I've watched this happen more times than I can count. Someone in their mid to late 50s does the calculation, sees the gap, and something shuts off. Not dramatically, it's not a single moment of giving up. It's more like a quiet decision that forms over a few weeks. I'll just work longer, or Social Security will cover most of it, or the most dangerous one. There's not enough time left for it to matter anyway. That last one is where compound interest becomes actively harmful advice. Because every piece of financial content aimed at younger audiences tells the same story. Start early, let compound interest do the work. Time in the market beats timing the market. It's good advice. For a 32-year-old, it's genuinely the right framework. But when someone repeats that same advice to a 58-year-old who's behind, what they're actually saying, without meaning to, is, the window you needed already closed. That's not motivation. That's a shame spiral dressed up as financial wisdom. The behavioral reality is this. When people feel like they've already failed by the rules of the game, they don't try harder. They disengage. The shame signal becomes the reason to stop, not the reason to start. And that disengagement is rational in a twisted way. If the only tool you've been given is compound interest over decades, and you only have 7 years left, then yes, the math doesn't work in your favor. So why try? But that's only true if compound interest is actually your primary lever at 58. It isn't. I can't tell you whether the market goes up or down this year. I won't pretend to know whether your portfolio will grow 6% or 9% over the next decade. Anyone offering you that certainty is selling something. What I can tell you is exactly how the tax system works in 2026. And at 58, 59, 60, the tax system is your actual lever. Not time, not compound interest. The advice that works for a 30-year-old will not save a 58-year-old, and telling someone who's behind to just keep investing and let it grow isn't encouragement. It's a math error. The real mechanism for this stage of life looks completely different, and that's what we're getting into next. Here's where I want to be straight with you about something. Early in my career, when I worked with clients who were behind on retirement savings, my default instinct was to push them toward higher risk investments. The logic seemed sound at the time. If you don't have enough and you don't have much time, you need higher returns to close the gap. Take on more risk, capture more upside, make up for lost ground. I was wrong about that. I've seen what happens when a 60-year-old bets on aggressive growth to catch up, and the market drops 25% in year 2. You don't just lose money. You lose the years you needed to recover. At that stage of life, chasing returns with risk is not a strategy. It's a coin flip with your retirement on the line. The actual mechanism available to people in their late 50s and early 60s in 2026 is not about picking better investments. It's about understanding two things that most financial content never explains clearly. The Secure 2.0, Super Catch-Up Contribution Limit, and what happens to your tax bracket when you use it aggressively. Let's start with the number. For 2026, the standard 401k contribution limit is $24,500. If you're 50 or older, the standard catch-up provision adds another $8,000, bringing the total to $32,500. But Secure 2.0 created something more powerful for a narrow age window. If you are age 60, 61, 62, or 63 by the end of the calendar year, and your plan allows it, your catch-up limit can rise to $11,250. That means your total 401k contribution ceiling for 2026, if you're in that 60 to 63 window, is $35,750. That's the contribution limit most people in this age group have never heard of. Now here's why the contribution limit alone is only half the story. Every dollar you put into a traditional 401k generally reduces the income that shows up for federal income tax purposes that year. So if you're earning $120,000 and you contribute the full $35,750 available to someone age 60 to 63 in 2026, you're cutting a large piece out of the income that gets exposed to federal tax. The exact bracket change depends on your filing status, deductions, spouse's income, and other income sources. But the core point is simple. This is not just saving for later. It can also reduce the tax bill you face right now. The tax benefit can be real and immediate when those dollars go into a traditional pre-tax 401k. But there is one important 2026 exception. If your prior year wages from that employer were above $150,000, your catch-up contributions may have to go in as Roth after-tax money. That means the long-term retirement benefit can still be valuable, but the immediate tax deduction may be smaller than you expect. Run the numbers over the full 4-year window, ages 60, 61, 62, and 63. And at the 2026 limit, you're looking at up to $143,000 in total 401k contributions before any employer match. The tax savings depend on whether the money goes in pre-tax or Roth, your filing status, and your actual taxable income. But for many households, the immediate tax impact can be a meaningful part of the catch-up strategy. That is the real catch-up mechanism, not risk. Not hope. Tax bracket manipulation using a law that was specifically written for people in exactly this situation. The trade-off is real and worth naming directly. To maximize this window, you have to compress your lifestyle for 3 to 4 years. That might mean delaying a major purchase. It might mean downsizing sooner than you planned. It might mean some uncomfortable conversations about the family budget. But the exchange is concrete. Short-term sacrifice now, in exchange for a meaningful jump in retirement assets that doesn't depend on market timing. To see what that actually looks like in practice, not as an abstract framework, but as a real decision a real household has to make, let's put it into a specific scenario. Meet a couple in Ohio. He's a mechanic, 58 years old. She works part-time at a school district. They raised 3 kids, put 2 of them through college, and kept the household together through 2 recessions and one period where they were carrying both a mortgage and tuition payments at the same time. Their combined 401k balance right now is $80,000. By the standard benchmarks, they are significantly behind. They know it. And that knowledge has settled into something heavier than stress. It's become a kind of background resignation. The math feels too broken to fix, so they've quietly decided to just keep doing what they're doing, contribute the minimum to get the employer match, and figure out Social Security when the time comes. That decision, the one that feels like acceptance, is actually the most expensive choice they'll make. Path 1. They stay the course. They keep contributing around 5% of income, collect the employer match, and let the account grow at a modest market rate until retirement at 67. By then, their 401k has grown to somewhere in the range of $210,000 to $230,000, depending on market conditions. Combined with Social Security, let's call it $38,000 a year for both of them. They're looking at a monthly draw that covers the basics, but leaves almost no cushion for what actually gets expensive in your 70s. Then the RMD clock starts. At age 73, IRS rules require them to begin withdrawing a minimum amount from their 401k every year, whether they need it or not. Those withdrawals are taxable. If they're also collecting Social Security, a portion of that becomes taxable too. The tax burden in retirement ends up higher than they expected. The cushion gets thinner. By their late 70s, a serious medical event, one hospitalization, one extended care situation, is enough to destabilize everything they built. That's not a dramatic outcome. That's just the math of staying passive when the system gave you a different option. Path 2. At 60, they make a hard call. They refinance their house to reduce the monthly payment. They cut back on discretionary spending in a way that's uncomfortable but survivable. And for the next 4 calendar years, ages 60, 61, 62, and 63, they try to use the super catch-up window on his 401k, up to $35,750 per year under the 2026 limit, if his plan allows it. Over that 4-year window, they could push up to $143,000 into the account before any employer match. If those contributions are pre-tax, his taxable income may drop significantly each year. The exact tax savings depend on their filing status, deductions, and whether any catch-up dollars must be Roth, but the direction is clear. They are using the tax code to create room that the market alone may not give them. By retirement at 67, their total picture looks fundamentally different. The 401k alone is closer to $380,000 to $420,000, depending on returns. Combined with Social Security and whatever home equity they've preserved, they have a buffer. Not wealth, not luxury, but a buffer, which is the actual thing that determines whether a bad year in your 70s is a setback or a catastrophe. The gap between those two outcomes isn't luck. It isn't income. They earned the same amount in both scenarios. The gap is one decision, made at 60, about whether to use a rule that already exists in their favor. That's the whole point. The system built a window specifically for people in this situation. Most people never find out it's there. They keep measuring themselves against a benchmark that was never designed to capture their full picture. Stay frozen by a shame signal that was never accurate to begin with, and leave a meaningful amount of financial security on the table. The distance between path 1 and path 2 isn't talent or timing. It's information. Let's bring this back to where we started. The number you've been measuring yourself against, the one in the headlines, the one that made your stomach drop, was never a complete picture. It was one account tracked by one institution with no visibility into the rest of your financial life. That benchmark was never designed to tell you how you're doing. It was designed to get your attention. Your actual retirement picture is the sum of every piece. Current 401k, old rollover IRAs, pension value if you have one, home equity, cash savings. Add those up before you decide how far behind you are. If you're in your 50s or early 60s and the number still looks thin after you've done that full accounting, that's a real situation and it deserves a real response. Not panic, not resignation, a response. The lever available to you in 2026 is not compound interest over decades you don't have. It's the tax code. Specifically, it's the Secure 2.0 super catch-up provision that can let people age 60, 61, 62, or 63 contribute up to $35,750 into a 401k in a single year if their plan allows it. If those dollars go in pre-tax, they may reduce taxable income immediately. If catch-up dollars have to go in as Roth, the tax benefit shifts from today to the future. That's not a loophole. That's a law written specifically for people who are exactly where you might be right now. So here's what to actually do this week. First, sit down and build your real number. Pull every account. Current 401k, any IRA accounts from previous employers, pension documents if applicable. Write down the total. That's your actual starting point, not the one-page PDF from your HR portal. Second, if you will be age 60, 61, 62, or 63 by the end of the year, call your HR department or plan administrator this week and ask one specific question. Does my plan allow the Secure 2.0 Super Catch-Up contribution? And am I set up to use the correct limit for my age group? Also ask whether your catch-up dollars must be Roth because of the 2026 high earner rule. A lot of plans require you to actively elect a higher contribution rate. It doesn't happen automatically. Those two steps cost you nothing except an afternoon. And they're the difference between making an informed decision and making the expensive default one. There's no version of this where the situation is too far gone to matter. The window is open. The law is in your favor. The only question is whether you know it in time to use it. If this kind of breakdown is useful to you, real numbers, real mechanisms, no panic, no false promises, hit subscribe. That's what this channel is built around. We'll see you in the next one.